Hi, friend, and welcome to this episode of Radiant Resilience. We are always looking for new guests on the podcast. I want to highlight you if you have a story of resilience that inspires others. Everyone has a story, and I believe that sharing yours can help others feel less alone. Are you ready to share your journey and inspire others? I want to hear from you. Every story has the power to impact lives and foster a supportive community. If you have a tale of overcoming adversity, personal growth, or a unique perspective on life's challenges, I would love to have you as a guest on the podcast. To become a guest, please email us directly at radiantresiliencepodcast@gmail.com or click the link in the show notes to become a guest. Join us in spreading hope, strength, and inspiration one story at a time. Be brave and share your story so others feel less alone. I hope to see you soon. Hello, friends, and welcome back to Radiant Reflections. I just got back from my trip to Pakistan and Oman. So I've had a lot of questions on how the trip was and the safety of the trip and all of these things. I thought I would do a little solo episode on my adventure in Pakistan. Here it is. I hope you guys enjoy it. Where do I even begin? Pakistan was amazing. Absolutely amazing. So stunning. The people were incredible. The food was good. It was super cheap. Yeah, just absolutely incredible. So we flew into Islamabad, which, as far as cities go, was meh. I thought that it was going to be a little bit more interesting because it's actually a newer city. So Rawalpindi, I believe, is the original city in that area. I'm not sure if it's the original capital, but Islamabad is a newer city. So it's not old and ancient and it's been the capital of Pakistan for cities have. It's actually very new. And it just wasn't that interesting. Not really set up for tourists in a lot of cities, capital cities especially. You have the main touristy area, and there wasn't really that. So hotels are spread out all over the city, restaurants are spread out all over the city. So it wasn't a very walkable city. It wasn't like you pretty much had to take a cab almost everywhere because everything is so spread out. So as far as tourism goes, I'm sure the way that they laid it out makes a lot of sense for locals, but for tourists, it was not as great. It was fine. We spent a couple days there trying to catch up on jet lag, but really could care less if we spent too much more time there. So after Islamabad, we took a car ride for 12 or 13 hours to a little, I don't even want to call it a village. It was even smaller than that. It's just like a meeting point spot, but it's called Rykot Bridge. There's like 2 hotels and a couple of restaurants. It's a very small area. And it was about 13 hours from Islamabad. And we shared the car with this couple from Brazil who actually has their own YouTube channel, which is super amazing and fun to learn about. And they were wonderful people. We ended up hanging out with them for quite a few days after that because they were so fun. So we hired the car together and had a driver and drove to Rykot Bridge. And the point in going to Rykot Bridge, because obviously, like I said before, there's like nothing there, is to go up to Fairy Meadows, which is a meadow up the mountain where you have an incredible view of Nanga Parbat, which is the second biggest mountain in Pakistan. K2 is the biggest mountain. And I'm thinking I should look up the altitude of it. So Nanga Parbat is 26,660 feet high. So huge mountain, incredible. I live in Colorado and we have incredible mountains here, all the 14ers and everything. But let me just tell you, that the Himalayan mountains are some of the most incredible mountains I have ever seen in my life. They are. I'm going to backtrack. They are the most incredible mountains I have ever seen in my life. Nothing compares to all those mountains that are over 20,000 feet or even over 25,000 feet. There's so many of them. They're stunning. Now, we went to Nepal back in 2011 and got to see the Himalayas there. And it was absolutely the most amazing thing I've ever seen. We went to Everest Base Camp and we went and did the Annapurna circuit. And I just can't even describe to you, like, photos, videos, words do not do these mountains justice, truly. Absolutely incredible. The range that we were in Pakistan is actually the Karakoram range. So it's still part of the Himalayas, but it's slightly different. Just a range within the Himalayas. So it's all still the Himalayas, but incredible. We went to Rykot Bridge, and from Rykot Bridge, you take a Jeep up a pretty narrow cliff down the right or the left-hand side dirt road that goes up these mountains. And it takes you to a stopping point, and then you have to walk for about 2 hours up, even 2 to 3 hours, even more, to get to the hotels and the whole, and the actual fairy meadow that's up there. And so then we hiked up and we had a wonderful hotel there. I highly recommend the hotel we stayed at there. It was D'Ambre Hotel. Absolutely amazing. Stunning room, stunning view. The owner guy was amazing. The food was good, everything. And from this hotel, you can see Nanga Parbat, and it was just this amazing, majestic, pure white, stunning mountain. And so while we were there, we hiked to the Nanga Parbat base camp and back. And then the next day, we were supposed to hike back down to where the Jeeps picked us up and then take the Jeeps back down to the main highway and move on to our next destination. It started raining that night before. Started raining the night before we were supposed to go down. And it was raining pretty good. And the Brazilian girl that we were hanging out with, she kept asking our hotel guy, is this going to be a problem? Is this going to be bad? And he's, no, it's fine. We get up early the next morning, the four of us, and we all start walking down. And we walked down to where the Jeeps are. We had arranged our driver to take us down. And he starts telling us that there were some landslides on the road and that they're trying to figure out how to get everybody down. Because we weren't the only ones. There was like a whole bunch of people. This is one of the most touristy things to do in Pakistan, is to go to Fairy Meadows because of the view and how incredible it is. So we waited around. There were some Pakistani people there that were touring, being tourists there as well. And they wanted to talk to us. And so they were helping translate what was going on with the drivers and things like that. Because our driver, he had English, but it had some English, but it was very minimal. So then we were told that we needed to walk. And there was so many varying stories on how many landslides there were and what the scoop was, and maybe they could bring a Jeep up from the bottom to meet us on the other side if we walked across them all, blah, 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 blah. So we finally decided we're going to start walking. So Jeep picks us up, takes us to the first landslide, basically. We get out of the car and we start walking down this road. And I am not kidding. There was probably, I think we counted between 20 and 30 landslides on this road and washouts. And I am not kidding you when I tell you large chunks of this road were gone, completely washed down the valley into the valley below and far down. Like, whole chunks of this road was missing or piled up with mud and dirt and rocks and all the things. And we were just walking down, and I kept saying to Colin, I'm like, there's no fucking way they fixed this road. There's no way. So they closed the season to go up to Fairy Meadows as of November 1st. So they just had this was the beginning of September. they close it for the season, and then they all go work in different places because of the snow and the conditions. So I'm like, 2 months left. No way they're going to get this road back up and running. No way. However, those drivers and the hotel people up there, like, that is their main source of income, their only source of income. That is their livelihood. So everyone was saying they'll get it up and running because it is their livelihood. And I believe that's true, but oh my Lanta. Now, I will say, I do not think they got that road safe and back to normal in 2 weeks, but they kept telling us 10 to 14 days. I have spoken to the owner of the hotel we stayed at since then via WhatsApp, and he said the road is clear. They're bringing people up just like normal. And I was like, there's no way they got that road safe and up to par. They got it passable. That is what happened. They got it passable. So we ended up having to walk down the entire road that day from Fairy Meadows all the way to the bottom, which was the main highway, or the Karakoram Highway, which is a famous highway, was 10 miles. I looked it up on Google Maps. So 10 miles from top to bottom that we were not anticipating walking that day. Now, Colin and I are big hikers, right? That was okay for us. We were both still exhausted and tired because we weren't anticipating walking down for that many hours, and then navigating these crazy landslides that we were like climbing through muck. And if you slipped, you were falling down the ravine. And that's terrifying. So it was a scary day, and it was a lot of work, and it was emotionally draining and really tough. So we get down to the main highway, and there had been for several days a huge landslide in the direction that we were going on the main Karakoram Highway. And we knew about it, but we had hoped that by going up to Fairy Meadows for a couple days that it would get cleared out by the time we came back down. And of course it had not. So we get down to Rycott Bridge. We grab some lunch because we were all starving. And we were thinking, like, do we get a hotel room? Because everybody kept telling us that the road was closed because of the landslide. We were like, are you kidding me? And let me tell you, Rycott Bridge is not a nice area to stay in. Like, it was fine, but there's not restaurants. There's nothing interesting. It's just like a starting point to go to Fairy Meadows. That's really all it is. Or a stopping point for the big semis that are taking the highway to places. At first, we were going to get a hotel room. The hotel room was pretty expensive. So the Brazilian couple decided to stay because they were exhausted and couldn't walk anymore. So we decide to, Colin says he wants to go walk across the landslide and hitch a ride from the other side of the landslide to the next spot that we were going to go to. I was like, I don't know about that. I'm not so sure. I'm going to be really pissed. I just walked 10 miles. I'm going to be real pissed if I walk more across this landslide and get to the other side and do not get a ride and have to walk back to get to get a hotel room for the night and stay the night. So I think we can do it. I think we can do it. So we do it, and we walk through this line of backed up cars, and then we finally get to the landslide, and I think we walked for about an hour. So maybe to get from Rycott Bridge to the other side of the landslide was about 2 miles. And we get to the other side, and I am talking, this landslide, you guys, was, for being on a main highway, there were 2 cars buried in mud, like half fully buried in the mud. It was absolutely insane. And there were people just waiting to be able to get through, to continue on and seeing what was going on and watching the tractors try to build this road, let people through, all these things. It was absolutely insane. And on both sides of the road was just like backed up wall to wall. Semis, buses, cars, trucks, you name it, motorcycles, everything. Because this was a main highway. This is if I-70 in the US was closed somewhere. Like, big deal, okay? So we did catch a ride on the other side of the landslide. Finally made it to Gilgit, which was the next town we were going. We wanted to go further than Gilgit, but we thought it was so late in the day at that point, we were probably going to have to stay there. Also, not an interesting city, just going to say. So we end up, the car drops us off at the car that picked us up at the landslide, drops us off at the bus station. So we were like, oh, we could take a minibus to the next town that we were going to go to. And so we decided to do that. But then the minibus, so it was like an hour and a half to 2 hour drive in the minibus, drops us off on the highway. And we have to walk like another mile or 2 miles to get to the town and the hotel. You guys, I think I walked. Hi, everyone. It's Tawny from Radiant Resilience. I have some exciting news. I've been nominated for an award in the Women in Podcasting Awards under the category of Inspiration and Motivation. I'm so honored and I love your support. If you found any inspiration or motivation from this podcast, I'd really appreciate it if you took a moment to go online and vote for Radiant Resilient. Please visit the link in the show notes. Your vote means the world to me, and it helps us reach even more people who might need to hear these stories. Thank you so much for being a part of this journey with me. I truly appreciate you. "12 or 14 miles that day. Must have been like 14 miles that day. With my backpack with all of my stuff in it, the whole day. Which I was really grateful at that point that we packed lightly because we didn't have the giant backpacking backpacks. So yeah, then because we only had 2 weeks in Pakistan, we were on a time crunch. So we needed to get moving, keep moving. So the main thing we were going to do in this town that we went to next was a big hike. We were like, okay. Do we get up the next day after all of that and hike again? And I was like, it made the most sense. Like nothing else made any sense. So it didn't make sense to have a rest day there. That would have put us behind. So we did. We woke up the next day and we went to Rakaposhi Base Camp. Rakaposhi is another mountain there. And it was a really hard hike. I think it took us about 8 or 9 hours to do up and back. So it was a long day. And let me tell you, the top part of it to get to the base camp was steep and really hard. And my legs were so tired. My whole body was so tired from the day before. But I was fortunate enough that I didn't have to carry my backpack. I didn't have to carry all my shit. I was carrying water and snacks, and that was about it. So we get up to the ridge there for Rakaposhi Base Camp, and I saw the most incredible view I have ever seen in my entire life of Rakaposhi. And I don't remember the names of the other mountains that are right there, but just like this stunning view of nothing but big, giant, white, beautiful mountains with this huge glacier that came down the valley. And I cried when I got over the ridge and I saw that view. I literally cried, and I have never cried in my entire life looking at a view before. I've seen some amazing views, but that topped everything I've ever seen in my life. So worth it. And one of the things I kept thinking about was how gorgeous it was and how insignificant I felt next to those huge mountains and gorgeous mountains and Mother Nature and all of those things. And I was also really sad for anybody out there who does not get to see that view in their lifetime. Truly, like this is how amazing that view was. Words cannot describe it. It was stunning. And I think I cried for that too. Like I was thinking of my parents and my in-laws, and they're older and don't travel as much. And who the hell do I know that's going to go to Pakistan also? Let's just be real about that. I have some traveling friends that might, but I'm telling you, if you ever get the opportunity or you're ever thinking about it, please go to Pakistan and see the Rakaposhi Base Camp view. Please. It is a bucket list must see before you die, please. I was so full of gratitude for being able to see that view. Truly. I've never seen anything like it ever in my life. So after we did that, we continued up the Hunza Valley. We went to Karimabad, and Colin did a hike from there. I chose not to. There's a couple forts there that we checked out that were cool. And then we went on to Pasu, and we rented a motorbike there. So there we were pretty close to the Chinese border. And the border right there between Pakistan and China on the Karakoram Highway is the highest border crossing in the world. Sits at 16,000 roughly feet and is just amazing. So we rented a motorcycle and drove up the highway. We didn't go all the way to the border because that would have been a long ways to go on the little motorcycle, but just to see the view, the mountains, and enjoy the valley even more. And it was absolutely amazing. I can't even describe how amazing those mountains are. And it was all very dry and jaggedy and sandy and deserty, very little vegetation there, except for in those random meadows that were right near the rivers and things like that. Like when we were in Fairy Meadows, it was very lush up there. Parts of Pakistan are very lush, or at least the Hunza Valley that we went to. So there's a lot of other Pakistan to see that we did not get to see, unfortunately, because we only had the 2 weeks. So that was after we went to Pasu. We went back to Gilgit, and then we had to make the ride back to Islamabad so that we could then catch our flight to Oman. That was what we did in a nutshell in Pakistan, but I do want to touch on a few of the other things, not just what we did, but I truly cannot express how kind and amazing the Pakistani people are. I've been to almost 50 countries. And I would rank Pakistan top 5 easy, if not number 1, for the nicest people in the world. They all just wanted to help you. None of them had an agenda. None of them were trying to get money out of you. I shouldn't say none, but even if they tried to hassle you or sell you something, if you said no, they backed off really quickly. Everyone was just incredibly friendly. When we arrived in the airport, you get a lot of hassle when you arrive in airports, whether it's from taxi drivers or whatever. And this guy came over and what are you, like, we obviously were lost and trying to figure our way around. And the guy from our hotel was supposed to pick us up, and our flight was super delayed. So we were trying to find him, and it was a whole thing. And this guy comes over and hey, are you guys okay? We're obviously meandering around, lost, not from there. And I was like really turned off from talking to them because I'm like, don't tell me. I don't need a taxi. I don't need a hotel. I don't need anything. Like, I don't need a tour. I just need to find my hotel. And he's like, well, what hotel are you staying at? And we told him, and he gets on his phone and he calls and he finds the guy and he brings us to the guy and he's, here you go. And he was like, bye, have a good day. And I looked at Colin and I was like, he didn't want anything. He literally just wanted to help us. I was absolutely mind blown. So the little hassle, we also hitchhiked a lot, which I don't normally like to do for a multitude of reasons. I don't like to wait for somebody to pick me up. I also am nervous about the people picking me up and the safety and things like that. But I would do it a million times over in Pakistan. We got picked up very quickly every time, and by some of the kindest locals I've ever met. They took us to lunch and paid for lunch. They stopped for tea. They showed us this lake. They showed us around, and they were just excited that they met tourists and they wanted to help us. And there was no agenda behind it. They didn't ask for money. They just wanted to help. And then a lot of people wanted to talk to you. Hey, where are you from? Oh, America. And then they would ask you questions. What part of America? Colorado. Oh, cool. And they would just talk to you. And it was so different. Years ago, we went to India, and I was so bummed because you were not able to talk to the locals at all without them wanting to get money out of you to some degree. And I felt like I wasn't a human. I wasn't looked at as a human. And I know that $1 for them goes a long ways. I understand that. But at the time, I didn't have a ton of money myself, and I couldn't just give every single person I saw money. And they just wanted tips for silly things, and they would chase you down the street trying to get you to buy something. And Nobody actually wanted to just talk to you. And part of what I love about traveling is getting to know the cultures and the people. And that was very difficult to do in the parts of India that we went to. I expected Pakistan to be similar because it used to be part of India. And I was so pleasantly surprised that it was not that at all. Absolutely not. We actually, even in Karimabad, we were looking for a hotel room and we went in this first hotel and they were full. So then we went in the second hotel and he goes, well, all I have is this room that was literally going to be like $5. And I was like, oh boy, here we go. Like, I don't think $5 is going to get you a nice room. And so he shows us the room and I was like, hell no. It was not clean. It was like a dungeon. It was, I said, no way. So Colin asked him if he recommended any other hotels nearby, and he was kind enough to say, yeah, you should check out this place. And then we started heading that direction. He said, do you want some tea? Do you want, also, I should say that Pakistan is a dry country. It is a Muslim country that is dry. There is no alcohol anywhere. Supposedly you can find it if you try really hard, but we just didn't try very hard. We decided to take a break from drinking for a few weeks. They drink chai, and chai to them is black tea with milk and cardamom. And it's everywhere. We drank so much chai. It was hilarious. So this guy at the hotel, he says, do you want some chai? And we were like, yeah, sure. We'll go have some chai. We go in his little restaurant. We sit down. He brings us chai. We have the chai. And then we went to pay when we were leaving because it was like a little restaurant. And he said, no, it's okay. It's a gift. And I was like, oh my gosh, like there are a lot of people in America that won't be that kind to you. It was amazing. Truly, the people, I can't emphasize it enough, the nicest people. And I think that the media and things that we see of Middle Eastern countries, and really Pakistan is actually more Central Asia, is more considered geographically Central Asia versus Middle East. But I think that we are told that it is a Middle Eastern country. It is right next to Afghanistan. So it makes sense that people would think that about Pakistan. But I am telling you, the safety is one of the main questions that Colin and I keep getting. And I will tell you that it is perfectly safe. I won't tell you it's perfectly safe, but it was safe. No worse than here. I felt totally safe the entire time. And if anything were to happen, those people would take you under their wing and give you the shirt off their back. And I would have nothing to worry about there. It was incredible. At least the regions that we went to. I have heard that some of the other parts of Pakistan are a little bit stricter Muslim. The Hunza Valley is very used to having tourists and has been having tourists for tons and tons of years, decades, because tourists go there and climb the Himalayas. K2 is there. It's up a different valley, but very near to the Hunza Valley. And so it's a very touristy spot to go, and they're very used to tourists, and they are not as strict of Muslims. I have heard that other parts of Pakistan are more difficult to travel, especially as a woman. You have to cover up a little bit more. So I guess that'll lead me into traveling as a woman there. I tried to keep my clothing very conservative. I wore pants the entire time, even when it was hot as fuck. And I was able to wear t-shirts, so they want your at least shoulders covered. And I only had to cover my hair and my head when I was inside of a mosque or in the mosque area. So I did not have to cover my head, my face, anything like that. I did buy a couple of outfits there of what they wear. They were shalwar kamises is what they're called. And it's like a long dress shirt thing that the sleeves come down at least to cover your elbows, if not all the way to your wrist, and then pants. So I bought a couple of those and I wore those around the cities mostly because the men would just stare at you otherwise awkwardly. I wore that a little bit. I had a headscarf to go into the mosques. And I will say that in the beginning, I was very turned off because the men walking around would not talk to me, not make eye contact with me. They wanted Colin to pay for things. And they weren't rude to me. They weren't rude. They just ignored me. And then there were a couple of restaurants where they shuffled us into a totally separate area, which I ended up figuring out later was like the family area. And if you looked around the restaurant, the other area was full of men, only men. And because I was a woman and with my husband, they put us in this family area. So I ended up talking to a couple of single female travelers and I asked them, I was like, are you finding it difficult to travel this country as a woman by yourself? And they said, absolutely not, that the people had been amazing to them, super helpful. And what I ended up figuring out is that they were treating me the way that they were, the men, because I was with Colin. So I was with a man, I was spoken for, and it was out of respect for him. It wasn't out of disrespect for me. So it's just really interesting to see those cultural differences. And I experienced that in India a long time ago as well, which is interesting because it's not a Muslim country, it's Hindu, but it's similar in that regard with the male female situation, just out of respect for Colin. I don't blame them for that. That's their culture. And like I said, I don't think they were trying to be disrespectful to me. They were trying to be respectful to Colin. So that's just culturally how they are. The food was absolutely incredible. Lots of curries, rice. They have a little bit of Chinese food because they have a lot of Chinese there, sharing a border there. We had a little bit of Afghani food and then a lot of Indian food, So I love Indian food. So that was fantastic for me. But one of their main dishes is called chicken biryani. And it's just like rice with chicken and some veggies and some spices. And it's very spicy. So I will say the Pakistani food is spicy. I struggled. I am a spice wuss, and I really struggled with the food there. So that was pretty tough. But it was really, anytime I had the opportunity to say little spicy, then they got it sometimes, but only sometimes. There were lots of breads, like naan breads that we had, lots of chai everywhere. And then they had some dumplings, influenced from China up the Hunza Valley, because I was close to the Chinese border. So yeah, that was the food that we had. Let's see. Oh, everything was so cheap. So cheap. I added up what we spent on this trip, including Oman, and we only spent about, for 3 weeks of a vacation for 2 people, hotels, food, everything, not including flights. I'm going to preface that. We used points for flights, so not including flights. We spent about $2,000. So Pakistan, super cheap. Colin and I could eat more than enough food for the two of us for $5. Hotel rooms, nice hotel rooms were $20 to $30, sometimes $40, depending on the region you were in, if it was more expensive. Now, we were there during an off season. If you go during busy season, which I think is a little bit earlier in the year, then everything's a lot more expensive. It's just the way that stuff is. Transportation was a bit of a challenge. The older I get, the harder it is for me to do the public transportation, which is what we've done for forever. But being able to hire those cars, hire drivers, that was pretty accessible, pretty cheap. And the Brazilian couple that we traveled with, they ended up, after hanging out with us, hiring a driver for the rest of their trip. And it was super cheap. It was $21 a day for a car and a driver plus the gas, which was super cheap. So that's definitely a way to do it if you can. Also, motorcycle tourism is super popular in Pakistan. We wish in hindsight we would have done that a little bit more, because that would have been fun. And to have your own transportation, to me, is just the best. But there's no way in hell either of us were going to drive a car on those roads. They were absolutely insane. Insane. Left-hand side of the road driving, and people driving like maniacs, passing you, honking you, unsafe situations. It just was fun. So yeah. So that was Pakistan. Oman is going to be a little bit shorter because we had no crazy adventures like the Fairy Meadows adventure, but we flew to Oman through Abu Dhabi, which, by the way, the Abu Dhabi airport is amazing. And we got to Oman and we rented a car and immediately started driving up the coast. And Oman is hot as fuck. I don't know how people live there. It was like 100 degrees and 100% humidity. I was dying the entire time. So if you're not in water or AC, you're dying. Sweating buckets, just hot. So we spent the majority of our time there in the wadis, which wadi means dry valley. But if you walk up these valleys, they all have springs that if you go all the way to the end of the valley, you'll find a spring that shoots water down the valley and creates these freshwater swimming pools. And we spent 5 days straight swimming in those swimming pool holes, and the water was so clear, beautiful turquoise blue, emerald green. The scenery around was super dramatic. It was so beautiful. If any of you saw my social media posts, you will definitely have seen so many pictures of all the wadis we went into in the beautiful water. And it was so cool and refreshing after walking to them. Some of them we had to walk to a 30 to 45-minute walk, which was really hard in that heat. But knowing that we had the water at the end helped significantly. And then, yeah, being able to jump in those pools to cool off after walking. Some of them you could access, they were super touristy and you could just drive right up and you didn't have to walk. But most of the ones we did, we had to walk to a little bit. We did have a couple of them completely to ourselves, which was really lovely. So, yeah, that was my favorite part about Oman. Oman is on the peninsula that Saudi Arabia is in, right near the UAE. It also shares a border with Yemen. So, Oman is not, it definitely has the oil money that all those other countries have, but not as much as Dubai, Saudi, Abu Dhabi, and those places. But still very well off. I didn't see a single homeless person. All of the houses were bigger than my current houses, which isn't saying much because I have a small house. But I just kept telling Colin, I'm like, I have not seen a single house that is the size of ours or smaller. They are all huge. So there's a lot of money there in Oman. Also, Oman is a dry country as well, so no alcohol there. We read also you could find it in like hotel bars and stuff like that for tourists, but we rented a car there, so it was super easy to drive around. Once you got out of the cities, there was like nobody on the roads. It was super easy to drive around. Food was good. Same thing, loads of Indian immigrants there. So lots of Indian food. Same thing, some Chinese food there also. Omani food, I don't think you couldn't really find it in restaurants very often. So I couldn't tell you what Omani food actually is because all the locals there go out to eat other things. So the restaurants were all other food. But yeah, the people there were also very nice, maybe not as like overly nice and friendly as Pakistan, but still just lovely people. Oh, I was going to tell this story too. In Oman, you have a lot of the similar, it's also a Muslim country. You have similar things for the women that you had in Pakistan and actually had a large variety of the Muslim outfits for women. We saw burqas, we saw hijabs, we saw a lot of Indians were wearing their saris. So lots and lots of different things culturally there. Even in Muscat, the main city, there were some girls wearing just jeans and t-shirts. So that was cool. But at a lot of the restaurants we went to, they were doing a banging takeaway business. Bang. I've never seen so many takeaways. And what they do is they drive up and they honk and they bring them out the food and then they take it and then they go home or maybe they eat in their cars. I don't really know. But I just couldn't believe it. And so I ended up figuring out that it has to have something to do with the women because we did see some of the full face burqas where their mouths were covered. And if you think about it, if you go to a restaurant, you have to remove that so you can eat. And they did have another family section in these restaurants that they would put families and the women could take their stuff off or whatever. But I think that's why they do so much takeout because think about how much more comfortable that would be to just go pick up your food from a restaurant and bring it home and be able to take your coverings off and eat at home like a normal human and not have to worry about it. At a lot of the restaurants in Oman, I was the only woman. There were definitely no local women, some tourist women. So if there were other women, a lot of the times they were foreigners. Yeah, just crazy. There were like no women roaming the streets even. Colin said to me at one point, he's like, how do these men meet women? Because they're just all hanging out with men. It's men hanging out with men everywhere. And the teenagers even. It's boys hanging out with boys. The women are like nowhere. And at one point I was like, maybe they meet them at the mosque. And then I was like, no, they don't meet them at the mosque either because the mosques all have separate women entrances. So I was like, maybe they still do arranged marriages there. I don't know that for a fact, but just a guess. I'm sure they do in some parts of Oman, or in some parts of those countries in general. But anyways, so yeah, I think that's pretty much it as far as things we did and stuff. So I did get a few questions I wanted to touch on. Somebody asked if we went in a group to Pakistan. We did not. We solo travel. We rarely do tours. We go very independent. We book all of our stuff on our own. We don't even book that much in advance. We just go and kind of book as we go. Sometimes we'll book some hotels in advance, but like tours and stuff, we've never really had a problem making those happen the day before. How did we plan or decide to go to Pakistan? We've been to a lot of countries. A huge reason we wanted to go was to see the Himalayas again and how amazing it is. And Colin has been wanting to go to Central Asia for a while. And so that's what he picked. And then we picked Pakistan for the mountains and the hiking, and Oman. We've heard nothing but amazing things about from everyone that's gone there. And we knew there would be more water sports there. So I'm a big water person. I love swimming. I love scuba diving. I love beaches, paddle boarding. I'm a Pisces. I feel at home in the water, even though I was born in the mountains. But I will always go to see the Himalayas for sure. How difficult was it to plan, and what were your favorite parts? So for me in Pakistan, the Rakaposhi base camp was 100% my favorite part. In Oman, all the wadis, there was one in particular that was my favorite, Wadi Bani Khalid. It was amazing. You could swim through canyons and yeah, super cool. Difficult to plan? No. Again, like I said, we don't do a lot of pre-planning. We planned our flights there. We planned our hotel in Islamabad, and we had an outline of the things we wanted to do in the time frame we had, and we just went and did it, which is why we had to move pretty quickly because we didn't have a ton of time. 2 weeks in Pakistan is not enough. Not enough. Our friends did a month. The Brazilian couple did a month, and I think that even wasn't quite enough to see everything. Because also the transportation's not great. Maybe if you were taking flights around the country, you could, but we had heard the flights got canceled a lot, so they were unreliable. So we didn't do any flights, like domestic flights within the country. How did you decide or know to take or even start to research this trip? So my husband is the research king. And honestly, I'm like a super go with the flow kind of person. And he was like, let's go to Pakistan and Oman. I think that's what we should do for the fall. And I was like, okay, let's do it. So we do Lonely Planet travel guides. Those are super huge for us. I have a whole library of every country we've been to. We use those a lot. They're really great resources for maps, for hotel suggestions, food suggestions. I will say, though, now that the internet is more robust, you can find everything on the internet these days. So we do a ton of internet research. We use those Lonely Planet books. Unfortunately, for this trip, the Pakistan Lonely Planet book was highly outdated, and so we just had to roll with it. A lot of the places in there were closed. We ended up finding out internet was more helpful for this trip. When we first started traveling, those Lonely Planet books were like our Bibles as we were traveling. Nowadays, we don't use them as much, but we still have, we have a really cool collection of all of them. That helps us plan and research. And yeah, my husband just does most of it. I let him take the reins. And I go, oh, this is something I want to do or not do. And he's okay. And we just do it that way. So he does most of it. Is it safe? Of course, that is the main question. Yes, I will say Pakistan is safe. Not the safest country, but what country is? Like, what country is 100% safe? None of them are. But I would go back to Pakistan. I felt totally safe the entire time. Food was amazing, really good. What's something you found interesting about each country that you weren't expecting? I think the friendly people in Pakistan. I was not expecting that at all. Amazing people. I think that for sure. And as far as Oman goes, I don't know. Those wadis were just surprisingly amazing. I knew about them. I'd seen pictures of them, but yeah, because Oman is like very deserty and dry. And so then you just come across these pools, and they were incredible. Oh, I also thought that we were going to be heavily sticker shocked coming from Pakistan to Oman, with Oman being a much wealthier country. And I was surprised that it was not. It was only a little bit more expensive than Oman. We had nice hotel rooms for $30 a night. We were eating meals for $5 to $10 for the two of us. And then all of the wadis were free. That was pretty unexpected as well, how cheap it actually was. Was there anything you were ever worried about while there with any Middle East unrest? No. So I had a few people text me about Israel and Palestine while I was over there. But if you look at the map, geographically, we were very far from that area. Didn't really worry about anything. There was some talk in Pakistan during our last few days. There was something going on with their previous prime minister, I believe it is, had been locked up in jail. I have no idea why. I don't know much about this. I didn't research much about it, but there was talks that potentially there was going to be protests in Islamabad at some point because they weren't letting him out. And he was a very well-liked prime minister by the people. But none of that happened, and I haven't really heard anything about it since. Yeah, that was about it. Other than that, everything was great. Everything was fine. No, we felt safe the whole time. Everything was good. So yeah, I think that is my episode on Pakistan and Oman. If you have any questions, feel free to email me or DM me. You can hit the text message in the show notes. But yeah, that was my trip. It was wonderful and amazing. I would highly recommend both countries, Pakistan. If you ever get the chance, I know most people don't think about those countries, but I give them high marks for sure. Colin and I both said that this trip ranks within our top 10. It's hard because we've been to so many countries. We have to sit down and try to chat it out and work through it because we've been to so many that to be top 5, you have to be really good. I wish we had a little bit more time for both countries. I really do. I think that I was going to touch a little bit on, I was doing a lot of processing on this trip. I'm going to go a little emotional here for a little bit. But when I was in Colombia at the beginning of the year, I had a lot of family stuff going on. My grandpa went into the hospital. Every time I turned my phone on to get service, I was worried I was going to get the text message that he had passed away. And I did finally at the end of the trip, but it was just a constant, like that was in the back of my mind. I had some other family stuff going on that I was worried about, and I felt bad not being at home. I had some stuff going on with my clients at the salon that was dramatic, and that was really stressful and hard because that is my livelihood. And it was a lot. And I didn't get to relax and process the way that I had hoped. And I didn't really realize it even. It's so funny how hindsight is 2020, always. I go on these trips and I think, oh, I'm relaxing, I'm processing, blah, blah. And sometimes I'm not at all. In Colombia, I will say it was not at all. So this was the first trip in a really long time that I had very minimal family stuff going on, very minimal, if nothing, going on at the salon. All my clients were taken care of. I was only gone for 3 weeks, so half the people didn't even notice probably that I was gone. So I got to do a lot more decompressing, relaxing, processing. I'm still very lost and confused on my fertility journey. It changes daily on whether or not I want to. I still am sure I don't want to pursue treatment, but a few things crossed my mind on the trip that I would like to be open to. I thought a little bit more about adoption, especially when I saw the little Pakistani kids running around. I thought maybe international adoption. I was thinking a little bit more about donors, but it's all just so much. And I feel like I still just need to give it time. I'm still hurting. I'm better. I don't think this hole and grief will ever go away, but hopefully it will get a little bit easier as time goes on to deal with. But it's tough. All this stuff is so hard. And just trying to figure out my purpose in life, what I want to do, what I want to be. Because I always thought I'd be a mom. And if that's not the case, then yeah. I also saw a post while I was gone, actually, it was from a fertility account that I follow, and I screenshot it. I'm going to read it to you because it was actually extremely upsetting to me. It said, in a couple of years, you won't care how long it took. You won't care how old you are. You'll just be happy that you never gave up. Let me just tell you, while I know that's true, my mind, body, and soul could not keep going the way that I was going. So to shame people for stopping treatment or stopping to pursue motherhood or like having children in any capacity is not okay. Let me just say that, because I have beat myself up like you wouldn't believe because I feel like I gave up. And at the same time, I know that I did what was right for me because I could not emotionally keep putting myself through that heartbreak. Now, I know that if I kept going and ended with a child, I would have, I would know that I wouldn't even look back and I wouldn't even think about it and I would be happy and I wouldn't care how long it took. But what if that never happens? Are you just supposed to keep going and keep putting yourself through that? I don't think so. Everyone has a threshold, and you will know in your heart and soul when you've hit that point. And you also need to take care of yourself. Infertility, my infertility journey absolutely annihilated a piece of me that I never thought would happen. And I was so broken at times. I didn't know if I was going to pick myself back up. And to shame people for not wanting to continue that heartbreak over and over is not okay. So I was very disappointed in this fertility account for posting something like that. I understand why, I get that sentiment. I see that side of it, but that is all coming from people who made it to the other side and have children. And there is an entire category of us out there that are childless, not by choice. And childless by choice, too. Like, obviously, this isn't referring to that, but that's okay, too. We don't need to shame people into this and make people feel like if they're not mothers, they're less than. And because you didn't try hard enough and because you didn't keep going and because you didn't do this, then you're less than. I put my entire being and heart and soul into that process. Truly. And I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't do it. Not to say I can't keep doing it in the future. It's been almost a year since my last fertility treatment. Last November was my last embryo transfer. And I feel more at peace than I ever have in the last 10 years. I'm still healing, don't get me wrong. There's still so many deep wounds to heal, but I'm doing much better. And the thought of putting myself back into that, if I think about going back to treatment, gives me so much anxiety and stresses me out. And it's been so nice to not have to think about treatment, to not have to think about the next doctor's appointment, how I'm going to pay for it. Is it going to work? What happens if it doesn't work? When we do this, when we do that, how I get the meds, all the shit. Like having almost an entire year of not thinking about it. Other than the few thoughts here and there that are like, maybe I could do this. Maybe I could do that. Maybe I should explore this. Maybe this, maybe that. Has been so healing. I can't even tell you. So sorry about my soapbox. It's just, I had to go there a little bit. Gotta stick to the theme of the podcast and not just talk about travel and fun stuff. Because it's true, I'm still very much on a healing journey, and this trip contributed to that heavily. This year has been so heavy. So fertility stuff aside, because I haven't even been doing that, the amount of death that has been in my life in 2024, starting with my grandpa, has been awful. More death than I've ever had in my life. I've been very fortunate to this point to not have a lot of experience with death or close people to me dying until this year. And some of the most heartbreaking deaths have happened in my life this year. And it's hard. It's been really hard. It's been really heavy. The one positive thing is I got through, my little sister got married. If you haven't listened to her episode, definitely go back and listen to that one. It is episode 9. If you go back to episode 9, you can hear my little sister's teenage and early 20 years journey. It was quite the hard journey. The girl's lived a million lives ever since she became a teenager. Getting her married and being a part of her wedding was amazing. I'm so grateful I got to be a part of that. That was one of the few happy, positive things that happened this year. And then after that, we went on our trip, and now I have the rest of the year. We've got friends coming to visit next week from Canada. So excited to see them. And then I've got a Disney trip towards the end of the year, and then we'll go on another big trip in January, and I'll give you guys an update on that. We haven't totally decided where that's going to be yet. But yeah, so it's just been a tough year. I needed this trip very badly, and it was incredible. And again, Pakistan, Oman, highly recommend. If you have any other questions regarding traveling or Pakistan or Oman or healing or whatever, please feel free to reach out. You can find all the information in the show notes of how to get in contact with me via email, Instagram. And yeah, I think that's about it. I'm going to close it out here. And I hope you all enjoyed this episode. I know it's a long one, but I hope you enjoyed hearing my stories and learning more about travel. And yeah, enjoy, and I'll see you on the next episode. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. If you enjoyed our conversation and found value in the stories shared, please consider following us on your preferred podcast platform. Your ratings and reviews make a huge difference. They help us reach more listeners and continue bringing you engaging, insightful content. We appreciate your support and would love to hear your thoughts and feedback. Until next time, keep listening, growing, and sharing.